What is good, my people? We are live back. I'm just coming on real quick to highlight the people. Let y'all know that subscribe to the backup channel. I just put the new video up on the backup channel, so I just wanted to come on and let y'all know and talk to y'all for a little bit if y'all still up or whatever. And y'all can call in the number right there on the screen. It's 804-601-4015. So, I'm just, coming on to make sure y'all subscribe to the channel. Is in the description. But, in the video, I was talking a little bit about how, of course they have to make sure that there is no safe spaces for us. They have to make sure that there is nowhere where we can go where we can escape from white supremacy, because they need to keep that mindset in us, right? But they need to have that mindset to be perpetual. Like, we have to be on autopilot, right? We have to be the ones. And the thing is, the system is never going to stop. And they make sure to destroy everything that we could do to possibly get out of the system. That's why it's important for them to target our family structure, because that is the most important part. Like, creating a strong family, that's the most important part to building a strong nation. You start with the family, then you build with the neighborhood, the community, then the state, then the nation. And until we have a powerful, strong nation backing us up, then the same thing is going to keep happening to us. Now, they create destruction in our homes, and now we see a lot of the effects of it. And there's a lot of mental illness in our communities, but it's undiagnosed, it's unrecognized. And at the end of the day, it is true that hurt people. And, we are in a society designed to make sure that we are nothing but servants, right? And this whole mindset goes back to, making a slave. When they came and they first saw us, they had to make sure that they saw as not a person. And we talk about voting and trying to get in their system to change the system, but you can't change the system. You can't take the root out of something and expect it to survive. And this system was built off of destruction, off of bloodshed. There still hasn't been a law or anything to overturn the Dred Scott case. There's never been anything to overturn the Three-Fifths Compromise. In the American Constitution and in American law, you are still not considered a full person. Right? Tennessee is just right now trying to pass a law to take away slavery from the Constitution, from the state Constitution. But what they don't say is it's in the American Constitution. And we all know about, except for the punishment for a crime. But nobody really focuses on the involuntary part, because they only really said involuntary servitude. But if they set conditions to where you have to be servants, right, where they send your children to school to learn how to be workers for them and don't teach you anything about economics, what do you expect them to do? And it's up to us, as the parents or whatever, to teach our kids economics, to teach them our history, because they're going to go out of the way to make sure we don't know our history so they can repeat it over and over and over. Right? We got to understand that white supremacy is not that creative. Right? They do the same thing over and over, but they just repackage it. There is nothing new. And if we was to ever learn about how many times we were successful in the past defending ourselves and the power that we actually have within ourselves, then it'll be a problem. Because we won't sit there and be anybody's slave. And we can go all throughout history and name each event. But at some point, and that's why I talk about the kind of what's going on, Jay Bird. Yeah, they not that creative. I mean, understand everything that they have, they took from somewhere else. They take your culture and resell it back to you. That's why, they always say go back to Africa. But if you did, they try to come back over there and kidnap us again. But that's why we have to realize, not only a war, but right now we are prisoners of war. And, I'm not going to be on here long. I'm just letting everybody know that, check out the backup channel, the Forecast Radio 24. I just uploaded the new video. I know they didn't really send out notifications. I didn't even get a notification on this channel. So, and if y'all want to call in, y'all can call in real quick. The number right there on the screen, 804-601-4015. But what they have to do is maintain chaos, keep you in a state of confusion, keep you in a state of fear so that they can maintain control. It's all about control. That's why they make sure to violate your boundaries, right? They will come up and disrespect or harm your children right in front of you just so you can't do anything about it, to let you know that you can't do anything about it. And if you dare say something or try to do something, we'll arrest you too. Do you know what kind of feeling, what kind of energy comes with seeing somebody come in your house and violate your girlfriend or your wife or violate your children? You know what kind of energy that comes with? That's the energy that they need you to be at. And I don't care who you are, that's going to affect you psychologically. And hundreds of years of trauma is going to affect us psychologically. And that's why it's so important to control what we see. That's why there is no black movies of, Black Panther is the first one we see where there isn't robbers and killers and all of that. There's a reason for that. Because if you were to know your true identity, why would you ever sit there and be a slave? Now, the same people trying to convince you that it's okay to be a slave and you should have accepted and just follow the rules, right? These are the same people that had no problem, going to war with the very people who funded them to get this country. But they tell you that standing up for somebody being shot down in the street, right? You should just follow the rules. Because that's what psychopaths do. They want it to be one way. They want it to be them. They can do whatever they want. But you better follow the rules. But they don't even follow their own rules. Right? Even when they came here, right? The doctrine of discovery, which, started off this whole slavery process. They weren't even supposed to enslave other Christians or who, if you, whatever God they served, if you serve their God, you aren't supposed to be enslaved for life. But they went against their own rules because it's not about morals. It's not about right and wrong. It's not about any of that. That's why they have to make you or dehumanize you. What's going on, brother guy? Call, well, I would say, come on, but I'm not gonna be on long. So, you can call in the number 804-601-4015. But that's why they dehumanize you, and they have all of these myths. And now, after all of this propaganda, especially that propaganda about the coked out Negro, all the way back from day one. Right now, they shoot a black man, and they'll let him lay on the ground. Not only lay on the ground, but they'll come and handcuff him as he's laying there bleeding to death. Because I really believe in some of their minds, they really think that that kind of stuff don't hurt us, and we can just get up and still attack them. Now, some of them, yeah, they get their rocks off, knowing they can get away with that. Some of them do it just for the stripes. But some of them do have this inherent fear, but that goes back to all of this propaganda. And there's a reason why they have to have this propaganda, and they dehumanize you in order so they can sleep at night. Right? When they were making you property, and that's another thing psychopaths do. Right? You are nothing but their property. They see you as a toy to be used, and you better comply. I keep saying this because you can't reason with that. You can't explain that. You can't talk that away. It's a disorder. It's a mental condition that you can't change, and there's nothing you can do about it. Because what have we done since day one? Right? We first see the pale face. We welcome them with open arms. Right? Except for, I guess, Shaka Zulu, who warned about him. And he said, you're going to be taken over by white people eventually. But from day one, we welcomed them with open arms. We came and said, okay, we'll play by your rules. And every time we do, what do? They move the goalpost on you. They switch it up. Right? In the beginning, right? The very first, that's why they like to mix up history and all of that stuff. But when you actually see history and how it goes down, it makes a lot of sense. Right? When they first brought quote unquote slaves over here, they were technically indentured servants, but they were never meant to be that. But when it got time for these black people to get free, they start doing things to them, making decisions in court to enslave them for life, essentially going from indentured servant to slave because they're going to move the goalposts. Right? They said, again, the doctrine of discovery. If you accepted the ways of the Englishmen and accepted, their religion, that's where a lot of black Christians probably thought that they could get freedom by claiming they were Christians. And there were actually people who did for like a 20-year period in the 1600s. But they go against their own doctrine, their own religion, and all of that. And said that even if a black person gets baptized, they still are a slave. It doesn't matter because you're not a human. All through that, leading up to the Civil War, they said, we'll fight on your side. So we fought on their side. And they reneged on their promise. right? George Washington passed the fugitive slave law, which was so detrimental. It didn't just send back people who were quote unquote slaves. It allowed so many black people to start getting kidnapped, children to get kidnapped, who were really supposed to be free. Every time we try to side with them, they do nothing but move the goalposts because there is no reasoning with them. And even still today, all we say is, don't shoot us, don't kill us. But they give you every reason and an excuse not to. Now, these are the same people who will storm the Capitol. Like, history repeats itself over and over. That's why we have to start studying history. What's going on, Slang Nocturnal? Because history does nothing but repeat itself, right? Don't think that black people just start being revolutionary. This happens every couple of years. And the thing is about studying your enemy, you start to see that every time they think they're somewhat quote unquote threatened, the same people who tell you just follow the law and nothing bad will happen. Now, it doesn't matter that these laws are racist and set up for your failure, but if you just follow these laws, nothing bad will happen and some bad still happens. Now, these same people will go against their own laws and storm the Capitol. Now, if you study history, you'll see this happens over and over and over and over. Right? Of course, they have the most bloodiest history. It's happened, the Civil War was about the same thing, essentially, because Abraham Lincoln won and they thought he was going to end slavery or at least raise taxes. Every time they fought, it isn't because somebody violating their children or enslaving them or slaughtering them. It was over money. They were willing to defend themselves and fight for what they believe in over money. But they tell you you're wrong for defending yourself because they violate your boundaries. And when they violate your boundaries, they harm your children. The most sacred boundaries you could have. Because they know if they can violate your boundaries and you don't do nothing about it, they got you. They know if they come in your apartment and kill your brother and you go to their trial and ask for forgiveness and a hug, you're still in your place. You're the good Negro you're supposed to be. But when you start saying, yo, we're not putting up with you killing us no more, we're going to arm ourselves and defend ourselves, right? Because again, history always repeats itself. Don't think there hasn't been black militias time and time and time and time again. And don't think they haven't changed gun laws in America every time. Because every war in America, they didn't want to arm black people, but they had to because they were essentially losing the war. From the Revolutionary War, they were losing to Britain until George Washington armed black people. Abraham Lincoln took a playbook from George Washington when he was losing the Civil War. He armed black people. And every time after each one of those wars, the World War II, the same thing. And every time after those wars, black people were like, hey, we fought for this country. And we are now trained and we have guns and we're not putting up with it. See, we don't hear about a lot of these stories about how when they tried to come in our towns and black people were ready and prepared for it. How they would, sit up on the rooftops and shoot out all the lights. And, the police or any white person trying to come in their community to do any harm, They would just start sniping at them. And they realized they couldn't beat them. But we don't really hear about it. We don't hear about, the new Negroes from the 1920s who, after World War One, they weren't having it no more. They got tired of it. A lot of those civil rights people like Stokely Carmichael, they came back from war armed and ready. And then, you hear stories, about how those black soldiers were hung in Texas. They felt the same way that we feel today. They were like, we're not having it. And they were fighting back, but we don't hear about that in history. Because if we did, we'll see not only our successes, but our failures and how we can correct that. And ain't like I said, I don't want to just be on here ranting too long because it's already late. So, if y'all want to call in, the number is 804-601-4015. Make sure y'all subscribe to the backup channel, the Forecast Radio 24. I just uploaded the new video. I just came on to let y'all know whatever. But that's just the way it is. But every single time they renege. But at some point, we're gonna have to reach the mindset that self-defense is not only necessary, but we don't have any other choice. Because any living creature in the universe has that survival instinct. But we are the only ones that have to apologize about it. But that shows you the level of abuse, right? If you study an abusive relationship, then you see the same characteristics. It shows you the level of abuse when you have to say, George Floyd being killed was horrible, but not all cops are bad. Who cares if all cops are good or bad? I'll tell you what, all cops uphold a system of white supremacy, black and white cops. When Trayvon Martin is killed, we have to say, oh, we don't have anything against the Hispanic community. But we just don't want Trayvon Martin to be killed. Who cares? Or this whole Asian thing. We feel like we have to have the need to come out and speak against our own and say, no, we're an ally to the Asian community. But guess what? When that cop, Peter Liang, shot and killed somebody, they were right on code. When that, or well, whatever happened in LA in 1992 when when that sister got shot in that store, they got right on code. But guess what? You have one video or one black person is allegedly killed an Asian person, right? And they get a law passed. They're on TV pushing this stop Asian hate. And you can't blame them. You have to learn from them. They said, there's been a year of this. We've had enough. 1 year of this. And we've had enough. Now, this has been over 500 years for us, and we're still having to be apologetic about that. Why is that? And that's a whole sense of fear that has been beaten within us. But we have to heal ourselves. What's going on, brother Bakari? Um, yeah, you can call in too, brother Bakari. Yeah, Derek Chauvinist. Yeah, we have definitely severe Stockholm syndrome. Some people have it worse than others. And that's why me personally, I'm not as hard on, quote unquote coons as other people, because I get as a psychological, they're a victim of white supremacy. And the only way to stop it is just to destroy the whole system in itself. But it's designed for us to start running white supremacy on ourselves. And yeah, I definitely want y'all to call in the number right there on the screen, 804-601-4015. But that's why we have to understand that none of this is on purpose. We sit there and try to convince a group of people who created the system how the system works. They know how it works, they made it. But we try to convince everybody and prove our point, but they know that. They push it. And you can tell that they know it by how they respond when something happens to them. You can tell they know because all of a sudden, now we're supposed to put on our cape for them. So that means all of this time you've been seeing what's happening to us, but you just didn't care because it wasn't happening to you. And believe me, they won't care later once it stopped happening to them. Now, every other group, right? It doesn't take them harming their children or walking in their house and beating up their woman or killing that woman inside her own house. It doesn't take that. They have no problem standing up for themselves if they feel like somebody just cheated them out of money, even if they didn't. They say, give me liberty or give me death. But if I was to say it, then that makes you a threat because you are a threat. But we aren't saying anything different than George Washington told America and they put his face on the mountain. Why do you think that is? Why do you think we live in a place that spend more on self-defense than anybody in the world? And yet you talk about self-defense and let that quote unquote American side out, then you're wrong. When all we've ever done was try to fit in. Because during those times when we come back from war, we didn't say, yo, we want to we want to fight. We want our freedom or else. No, we were in our own towns minding our own business and they came starting and they self-defense. But every time they tried to talk it out. Every generation tried to talk it out. You can't talk to psychopaths because all they're going to do is flip it on you, make it seem like you're the one that's wrong, you're the one that's crazy. And they talk around the point. They don't ever address the point. And if you get them on something, then it's just, well, let's just forget about history. Let's just forget about it. But they'll never forget about their history, ever. And they make sure you never forget about it, even if it's made up history to start off with. As Black people, we should notice that it's something wrong that we learned that Christopher Columbus discovered America, but we don't know who Denmark Vesey is. We know who George Washington is, but we don't know who Gabriel Prosser is. We don't know who Madison Washington is. We have to realize that when your enemy starts to pick your heroes and pick the history that you know, it's for a reason to keep you on that same cycle, because they understand who you are and what you have. I mean, think about it. The places, just the places around the world that are the nicest, or just, as far as the weather and how it looks, is usually the poorest, but that's where you find the black people at around the world. This is a global system. And, they have their tribal differences, but the thing is, we can't afford to have our tribal differences. They slaughtered each other. They slaughtered each other to be in control over us, but they learn how to put their whiteness aside, right? We, as a collective of black people worldwide, never had our own, like, Berlin Conference. Well, we put our tribalism aside for self-defense of blackness, because until other groups are targeted, they really don't care. They understand the darker you are, the more targeted you are. That's why the darker nations see the places with the darkest pigment is the places that have the most lightening skin cream or whatever. It's a global system of white supremacy that is shown, because they understood it's easier to raise a slave than it is to make a slave. If you know freedom, it's harder to break you down and make you a slave. But if you're born into slavery, you know no other life. And if they can control your history to start at slavery, then what else do you know? You don't even know about fighting back. You don't even know how unified we have been all throughout history. The history of white supremacy. Yeah, we definitely yeah, they use weapons. They definitely use weapons. But still, even with weapons, they had to use deception. Even with weapons, right? They go against their own all the time, or they go against people with less weapons all the time. But they still have to come at them with treaties and trick them and get them doing backhanded things, right? Like going against Haiti. Napoleon had the biggest army. He just kept sending troops and sending troops and sending troops, but they understood how to fight. They didn't just fight head up. They caught them slipping. They used the terrain. They used their knowledge of nature, and they crushed them. So what did they do? They went in and they understood that Toussaint wanted to be he wanted to be accepted by them. So they said, okay, we'll accept you, we'll give you a position, but they set him up. They signed treaties with all of these Native American groups, quote unquote, but they do nothing but set them up. That's nothing but a trick to get their leaders, because they figure if you kill the leader, then the whole movement dies. But that's why it's important to understand that as people, unity, black unity is the black messiah. All of us. Because it doesn't stop with one person, because that energy is just going to go to somebody else. But that's the art of war. And that's what your enemy has to do. Divide and conquer is a simple technique, but it's very effective. Right? They never had the numbers. Right? Even when, George Washington and them went against the British, they didn't have the numbers. They didn't have the biggest weapons. What they have to do is use deception. Even with the police, right? They have a cop out there. They have a gun. But if you're in a crowd, best believe if you pull up in a crowd and you have 10 people there who are armed and making sure that you don't violate nobody's rights, they're going to think twice. Because one thing you have to understand about any kind of person who likes to be a bully, it's because they're fearful themselves. It's because they're nothing but scared little children themselves. So they try to project that onto you. Because we all know that's one of their main things is projection. And one of the things they are afraid of is that people are going to do to them what they did to everybody else. But other people don't have that kind of mentality. Who wants to castrate somebody and keep it in the jar? Who wants to pluck somebody's eyeballs out just for reading? Right? Who wants to violate children? Right? Or God forbid it be an interracial baby, they'll choke that baby out. No, I ain't heard that song. People don't think like that, but when you think a certain way, you think everybody else thinks the same way that you do in a psychopathic way. They feel like it's survival. But the thing is, we have to respond with more urgency than they do to get out of the position that we are in. Because they're going to respond with urgency to keep us in this position. And you see how they respond. When they saw the writing on the wall, they went out, they bought their guns, they made their militias, they will strike at any time, and they have no problem spilling blood, and they know they have a system that will protect them. And then you have the other side who act like they're your friends, but they will never side with you to destroy a system that they know was designed to protect them overall. They may talk about their white privilege, but what they want to do is make it more comfortable for you to assimilate into somebody else's system. Now, I do talk about the police shootings and how they harm us, but that's just the thing that makes people the most mad. But in reality, we should be pissed off that we aren't in control of our own autonomy, that we have to live according to somebody else's laws, that we have to be subject to somebody else controlling our food. You can grow your own food, but you still are subject to their laws. We should be angry that we are we don't have our own school system. We don't have our own institutions. Those are the things we should be pissed off about. Everyday things. Because if we live in a society where we gotta have a dragged out trial for somebody who murdered somebody on camera like George Floyd, and there gotta be a dragged out trial and you don't know what's gonna happen. We don't need to be in the same society. If you think that, what Zimmerman did to Trayvon Martin was okay, then we don't need to be living in the same society. And of course, and obviously, their justice system thinks things like that is okay. And I personally don't want to live in a society like that. Yeah, I definitely will check it out. And yeah, definitely the most dangerous weapon is the white woman. white female, and how they've been used throughout history. We allow them to play both sides of the fence, right? We accept them, right? We let them get on this oppressed bandwagon, right? Some people buy into this patriarchy system, but how can it be when a black man has never been over a white woman in this system, right? How can you have a system where you have a majority of the population, majority of the voter block, but call themselves a minority? And that's why they have to get us to identify as this minority. And one of the reasons why Ida B. Wells, well, I would say Ida B. Wells is my hero. She was one of the first people to expose white women and how they were used, and how white women were nothing but an excuse to attack black people economically, to starve us out economically. They knew these white women were lying. They know these white women are lying, right? And you can go to any of the sites, because for a while we were saying, well, black people are the only people who, disrespect each other as far as the gender wars. No, they do all of that stuff too, right? They say all of the same stuff. And they knew these white women were lying. All right, yeah, that's all good. But the thing is, they saw these black people in communities of their own. There was no illusion of inclusion. They saw them thriving with their own businesses, supporting one another, actually building something up, right? They were looking at it like, yo, how this nigga got a piano and I don't got one? I deserve to have everything that nigga got. Oh, this white woman accused him of rape. Well, let's kill everybody in the town. Why were they killing children and women and babies if that was the case? Because, again, white supremacy is all about deception. It has to be about deception. And you have to understand that deep down, psychopaths are nothing but cowards. And they have to make you feel powerless and worthless. And that's the only way that they can feel strong. Like, white supremacy is defined by black inferiority. And by tearing somebody else down, it's the only way they can build themselves up. And they have to keep you in a position to where you thinking you need them, but in reality, they need you. Everything in your culture, they take it and they sell it and they make millions. Everything, everything in America has gotten is from off the backs of, let's be real, black people. Everything. The government got its money off of slavery, right? All of the corporations and most of the banks today that are the biggest names, they got their money through through slavery. Right. We definitely have to work hard, but we have to get on code, and we have to work hard in a certain direction. And that's why it's important that, platforms like this, the internet has changed the game. The internet has definitely changed the game to where we can communicate. But even this, right? Like I said, YouTube can take my channel off anytime that they want to. And it's their platform. And the thing is, all the things that they do, you can't even blame them. It's their survival. It's just that we have to get the same mindset and not let them trick us into thinking that is wrong. To trick us into thinking self-preservation is wrong. Because that's all they're doing, is trying to preserve themselves. So don't ever underestimate the value of who you are. right? We are our ancestors. And don't underestimate the value and the power that you have. Right? Exactly. Everything that we do is going to be considered negative, but they will take that same thing, whatever stereotype they give it, and make a fortune off of it. That's just how it works, right? It's not just picking cotton anymore. And it never was. They've always used our ideas, our talents, our gifts, and made profit off of it. And bought, and not only made profit off of it, used it to our own demise, to destroy us with it, so they can continue to profit. Never underestimate how your enemy sees you, how much they plan for you, how much they watch you, how much they study you. Right? We know they've done scientific stuff on us. We know it. And there is a reason for that. Now, I appreciate y'all for coming through or whatever. It was already late. Make sure y'all subscribe to the backup channel, the Forecast Radio 24. I just uploaded the new video, and hopefully it stay up there. But I just wanted to let y'all know that it's on there. So make sure y'all subscribe. And I definitely appreciate all of y'all for all of y'all support and everything that's been going on. But yeah, it's definitely, man, we definitely got to start putting in that work, putting in even more work. And I know I'm gonna go harder on everything that I have to do. Right, I'm gonna do everything that I can. But at the end of the day, we gotta realize the Black Messiah is Black unity. We are the Black Messiah, all of us. Right, denial is definitely death. Right, everything that we do, right, they'll give it a bad name at first, but best believe they're gonna imitate it. What do you think that blackface got so popular? Why do you think they still do blackface? Right, they really imitating you. That's really them trying to be a part of Black culture, but they were so scared back then that they wouldn't even come around Black people, right? So they did watered down stuff of what they think Black culture was and trying to make fun of us. But believe me, that shows you how addicted they are to it. Because you don't see a crowd of Black people standing around watching whiteface. Right? You stay safe too, man. Y'all stay safe too. But it shows you the mindset of the people you're dealing with. Like, who does that? Who dresses up like that just to imitate you? Because they understand how powerful you are. It's just that we got to understand how powerful we are. And at some point, enough got to be enough, man. Right? They're definitely sick, but it's a mental disease, man. And you can get into all of that stuff, but it is what it is, man. It doesn't even matter because nothing's going to change. We're at the point that we're at right now, and we got to make a decision. Right? Are we okay with them coming in and disrespecting and harming our children and harming us, harming our elderly, controlling our money, you know, or do we want to be free? What are we willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to give up? How much work are you willing to put in? What mindset are you willing to have? And understand, you can learn a lot about the culture by who they value. Right? Look at the people they put on money. They put people like Andrew Jackson on money. That shows you the mindset of the people you're dealing with. People who would slaughter millions of people. And even when they try to compare a black person as a militant, all they can do is bring up another European. They try to compare you to Hitler as if Hitler wasn't a European like them. As if Hitler was any different from George Washington. As if Hitler was any better than as if Hitler was worse than Christopher Columbus or Leopold. There's a reason why they have to bring that up, because they understand. But they still have to compare you to make it not seem as bad. Right? They can't just come out and say you aren't a whole person, even though their laws and their all of that stuff still says the Casual Killing Act is still on the book, obviously. Because if they're disciplining you, right, you're not complying, then they can just shoot you. Right? You can still see that on the books, but you can't see any changes from the Dred Scott case. The 14th Amendment only said persons born in America. Notice the language they use. They use these languages for a reason, because their constitution says you're 3/5 of a person, not a person. And you don't see any laws overturning that. But yeah, man, I appreciate y'all for coming through, man. I appreciate y'all for listening to me rant for a little while. Make sure y'all subscribe to the channel, the Forecast Radio 24. I'm gonna be back and with another live stream in a few days. We're gonna go hard, man. And one thing I noticed while I've been gone is they're never gonna stop. They're doing the same thing over and over all day, every day. They're gonna keep pushing. They're gonna keep going hard. And we have to go even harder than they do. We have to respond with more urgency than they do. But I appreciate all of y'all. And as always, man, we have got to start standing for something, or we're gonna keep falling for anything.